Hey everybody, thanks for watching and thanks for purchasing and supporting, and welcome to Leviticus. Now Leviticus, again, when you understand, when you're reading through Exodus, we know that you have the whole out of Egypt story going through Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, headed towards Deuteronomy, and there's so much more that goes on, during those books. Now, what Leviticus? We know all the rituals and everything we're going to go into and what we're going to talk about is basically a prelude to, the coming of Jesus. And we're going to get into all this is really deep stuff. If you read Leviticus, if you've read it before, it's basically talking about if you sin and do this, you have to sacrifice that. If you do this, you have to do that. And this is basically what it's getting into. This is what we have to touch on, and this is what you guys got to understand because it's really deep. So, we're going to get into this. So again, thanks for supporting and purchasing and taking the time to watch, and let's get into Leviticus. We talked about in Exodus how, Exodus was ending off. You basically have the establishment of the church. Now, we can get into everything else. We'll go back and touch on Hitler and all this stuff as we go along because it fits in so many different places. But, you had the establishment of the church, them basically setting up, congregation and what's going to happen, the Passover, everything like that. Moses basically coming and giving the Israelites the law. So on Leviticus, again, since you have this guy that says his name is jealous, and he's a jealous God, which is crazy, you have what these Hebrews must do, what the Israelites must do if they break the commandments of God, if they break the laws of God. So now Leviticus is basically setting us up for the purpose and coming of Jesus Christ. So we're going to get into that, how and why. So one of the things is, as you read in Leviticus, if you have read it, from chapter 4 on, you basically have almost every, chapter starting out with God speaking to Moses and Aaron and telling them what to tell a congregation to do. So it's basically the same thing in modern church. You have pastors, preachers claiming to speak to God, hear the voice of God, and they're supposed to be telling us, the congregation, what God told them to tell us to do. So it's the same thing, again, establishing this whole connection, this whole church setup in Leviticus, Exodus as well. And that's what it's getting into. So now, of course, one of the weird things, not so much weird for the Israelites, is because they never really hear God speaking and, they don't really know. But, based upon what happened in Exodus and all the plagues and everything like that, they can tell that, this guy is real, he exists or what have you. But, for modern day congregation, we don't know what's going on with this preacher. It's ironic when you understand, the whole concept. You have this man talking about he spoke to God and God told him this message, and this is the message he's, conveying to the congregation. But what you really have is the preacher. Whenever this preacher, decides to put together and sit down and think and come up with his sermon, it's him. He is God. That's his sermon he's coming up with to give to the congregation. So it's him, metaphorically speaking, our understanding we are gods is still giving you God speaking to the congregation, that preacher being God giving you a doctrine. But, it's a false doctrine meant to steal your energy, to give it to the true God of this book, which we're going to get into. But you need to understand that concept. But it's crazy it's ironic how it all goes when you really start to understand what it's talking about. And we remember in Matthew 29:5, when it's talking about, many shall come in my name, saying that I am Christ, and shall deceive many. So it's giving it to you right there when it's talking about people coming in the name of Christ, saying that he is Christ, which Christ means, the king, the savior, the anointed one. So these preachers are coming and saying this dude in the book is Christ. And he said, this is what you need to know. He's coming, die for your sins and everything like that, and shall deceive many because, he's not. It's bullshit, which we all know. But, just to touch on that a little bit, Leviticus is really not what people think it is. Also, John 10:34, Jesus says, isn't it written that I said ye are gods? So as I broke down in and quoted the Bible on YouTube about us being Jesus, then you start to put together and understand that metaphor, which of course we'll get into. So the Bible is telling us, telling people, Christians, no idols, no graven images or what have you. Yet the Christians have crosses and, they pray to a man on the cross. They idolize this figure of a man. So the religion is centered around that. You also have the Bible talking about no worshiping the dead, no necromancy. But the religion is based upon people worshiping a dead man and calling forth a dead man and speaking to a dead man. So in all these aspects, Leviticus is important, really important. As I said, it's giving you the purpose and foreshadowing for the coming of Jesus or what have you. So before, Jesus is supposed to had, been born and perform miracles, was crucified and died for our sins. What is that about? Die for our sins. A lot of people never really figure that out because they haven't read the Old Testament. So when you go through the Old Testament, when you go through Leviticus, which we are doing now, it makes a lot more sense. So before Jesus was supposed to have died for our sins, remember now, if you're a Christian, you sin, you could just say what? You can pray and ask Jesus for forgiveness. It's done. But before this, when you go into the Old Testament, when you go into Leviticus, as I said, when you sinned, you had to provide a sacrifice. There's a ritual that must be performed for each sin. You have all these commandments given by Moses, not just 10, it's more when you really understand. So when you break each one, there's a different ritual. There's a different sacrifice. Things must be done for you to atone for that sin. Plain and simple. Blood must be shed because you sinned. So you had all this bloodshed going on, which we'll talk about, happening in Leviticus in the Old Testament. And then later on in the New Testament, Jesus comes along and say, you know what? I'm just going to die. One sacrifice for all the sins of mankind from here on out. So as you go, you're going to hear about the tabernacle, of course, which the tabernacle will be like the church, you might as well say. The thing is, remember, Moses can't enter the tabernacle. God speaks to Moses from the tabernacle, and the Israelites can't enter because they already broke God's covenant in Exodus. So in Leviticus, they basically are getting, the instructions from Moses and Aaron on what they need to do to basically appease God for their sins, to atone for their sins by offering these sacrifices to God in replacement for them. So instead of them dying, the animal has to die in exchange. So again, no matter how you slice it, no matter how people put this, it's still crazy when you really seriously think about what it's saying here. Okay, so here's where that whole common sense thing comes in again. Because you got to think about it. This is supposed to be God Almighty again. So God, it's God under some kind of time frame, or it's the rules he has to follow. What's going on? If it was ever possible for us to just simply pray to God and say, I fucked up, God, can you forgive me? If it was ever possible to do that, why would you have these people sacrificing goats and lambs and, mutilating these animals and spraying their blood everywhere? As you're going to read some fucked up shit in Leviticus, if you read it. Why have these people go through all these sacrifices and everything and eating animals and blood everywhere and all that? If it was possible, if later on you was just going to, have Mary give a virgin birth, so-called virgin birth, if he really did exist, and, give them powers, raising the dead and healing the sick and all that, walking on water, then to be crucified and supposedly die on a cross. All that, just so we can say, I fucked up, God, can you forgive me? If you was going to make that possible, why go through any of this in the first place and not just allow people to just say, can you forgive me? And that be that. So you got to think about the sacrifices, hundreds of years, thousands of years, what have you, of ritual sacrifices and blood shedding and everything like that, just so we can say that, and for Jesus to come along and suffer and die just so we can, can you forgive me? It's a simple thing. It's a simple question you just asking. Anybody who has done it before, if you was Christian, you repented before and asked God for forgiveness. It's a simple process. It's not that hard to do. It's simple. So if it was possible, that was always on the table. It was possible to be on the table. What's the purpose of the sacrifice? So of course, that's some stupid shit. So we know, looking at the whole thing, there got to be something more deeper to the whole sacrifice meaning when you pay attention and look at it. So you have these people, commit these sins and, provide a sacrifice. And, of course, that's the Bible talk. So even if you want to look at it from that point of time, when it was establishing the religion and people were sinning, did they really actually had these people going out there and slaughtering animals, and to atone for sins? And again, all that is crazy, all that, blood and everything like that. Then to have Jesus be born and everything like that, sacrifice, tortured, killed and everything like that, for us to just ask for forgiveness. But on top of all that stuff happened just so we can ask for forgiveness and never receive validation. Never. What's the point? Never receive validation. You pray, ask forgiveness 100 times. Christians all over the world. Forgive me, God. Forgive me, God. Never receive an answer. Never receive validation of forgiveness of sins. You never got an answer. You don't know, if you was forgiven or not. So, it's stupid. It's something, again, when you start putting this stuff in the context of, I hate to say common sense, but common sense, it don't fit. So, of course, it's more to the story of this. So now this is where it started getting a little bit weird. And if you watched all the videos, you shouldn't have a problem. But bottom line, Leviticus is giving us voodoo. Plain and simple. It's giving us voodoo. Easy as that. Now, as I talked about in the voodoo series, this is what they are using against us. We call it voodoo. It's old as old. Plain and simple. It's been around for a long time. It's what they were doing. So you need to understand that, which is why it's in the beginning of the Bible. This stuff is old. It's been around and they know it. And it's telling you that they got this power a long time ago and they've been understanding it and using it to be in the position that they are in. So the whole thing, what is sin? It's talking about, breaking God's law and sinning and everything like that. What is it talking about? What is this sin? So God's law would be what? Universal law. Plain and simple. Leviticus is not about them, understanding ritual sacrifice and offering a burnt offering to atone for sins. It's not about that. It's about them using ritual sacrifice in order for them to commit sins in accordance with universal law. Plain and simple. And that's what it's about. See, they done got us running around in circles for a long time. This is the power they've been using. See, they got us off course. We are not in sync. We are not following the true anything. Plain and simple. They are following universal law. We are following man's law. Plain and simple. It's their law. We're not following universal law. We're off track. We're following man's law, statutes, codes, or what have you. And we know this already. So you have, get this analogy before, I think. You have a lion that can go out in the wild and rip a child from his mother and eat it right in front of his mom. Plain and simple. And, it's the most heinous thing that you will see, just nobody wants to see that. But it's in accordance with universal law. I mean, ain't no, police coming out to arrest those lions. It's not going to happen. Ain't no animal cops coming out to arrest the lion for eating that, But if you go out and you rip a child from its mother, first you're going to have to fight the mom, one. But two, the cops coming. And if you eat that baby, that's game over. You're done. So in accordance with universal law, with the lion, with the animals, we understand what they're doing. We understand kill or be killed and them eating to survive. It's not a waste. As I talked about before, animals, they don't go out and hunt and kill for sport. We do that. And they allow that and they brag on that and let people have the trophies of the carcasses on their wall and everything to keep them out of universal law. That's big. And we'll touch on this. Plain and simple. So everything is for us to stay out of sync with universal law and to stay under man's law and be governed under that. They want to be the only ones using it, right? And these rituals, so as I said, these big predatory cats and these predatory animals, they don't kill for sport. They don't hunt for sport. It's a purpose. We kill because somebody stepped on our sneakers. We kill over stupid shit, plain and simple. That is lower brain, physical activity. Plain and simple. It's higher powers out there, higher energies. And there's an understanding that must be known, because if you want to do something that you cannot physically do, that's not in the realm of possibility on a physical level, then you can use it. You can get these things accomplished on an energetic level, but where's the energy going to come from? As I talked about before, understanding about energy and how it cannot be created or destroyed, but transferred from one form to another. And when you understand that, understand what goes into that, that's a deep thing which we'll get into. But this is what they're doing. There's nothing, as I said before, everything they're doing is in accordance with universal law, plain and simple. Anybody that's basically going against universal law is fair game. Anything can happen to them. They're fair game to be sacrificed, plain and simple. They can be dealt with, because they're going against universal law. It's like, no real consequences to it when you begin to understand. So they have basically came up with an entire system that has us constantly and consistently going against universal law. Therefore, when these rituals take place and these sacrifices happen, it's because, we're open for it when you begin to understand what this stuff is really about. So as I said, this stuff deals, with voodoo. So let's get into Leviticus. And the Lord called unto Moses and spake unto him out of the tabernacle of the congregation, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying unto them, If any man of you bring an offering unto the Lord, ye shall bring your offering of the cattle, even of the herd and of the flock. If his offering be a burnt sacrifice of the herd, let him offer a male without blemish. He shall offer it of his own voluntary will at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before the Lord. And he shall put his hand upon the head of the burnt offering, and it shall be accepted for him to make atonement for him. And he shall kill the bullocks before the Lord, and the priests, Aaron's sons, shall bring the blood and sprinkle the blood round about upon the altar that is by the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And he shall flay the burnt offering and cut it into his pieces. Plain and simple. It's voodoo. So like I said, in voodoo, they sacrifice the animal. We know. We've seen all these blood sacrifices before with the animals with voodoo. And we know they eat the animal. So it's telling you here, Leviticus 8, 30 and 32. So it says, And Moses took of the anointing oil and of the blood which was upon the altar, and sprinkled it upon Aaron and upon his garments. Just putting blood on each other. And upon his sons, and upon his son's garment with him. And sanctify Aaron and his garments, and his son's garment with him. And Moses said unto Aaron and to the sons, Boil the flesh at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and there eat it with the bread that is in the basket of consecrations, as I commanded, saying, Aaron and his sons shall eat it. And that which remaineth of the flesh and of bread shall ye burn with fire. Now Leviticus chapter 9, we go to 8 to 10. It says, Aaron therefore went unto the altar and slew the calf of the sin offering, which was for himself. And the sons of Aaron brought the blood unto him, and he dipped his finger in the blood and put it upon the horns of the altar and poured out the blood at the bottom of the altar. But the fat and the kidneys and the caul above the liver of the sin offering he burnt upon the altar, as the Lord commanded Moses. So now as you read through Leviticus, it's full of this. He talks to Moses, Aaron, tells him, hey, go to the congregation, tell them this. You got to kill this, do that. Now, as I'm going through these verses and as you read yourself and you hear what it's saying and how it's done, all you got to do is just look at Google pictures of voodoo. Plain and simple. And look at what they're talking about here. What dipping the finger in the blood, spreading the blood everywhere, and what that's about. Plain and simple. It's basically what it's touching on. Now, as I said, it's spread all throughout Leviticus. And this is basically what the entire book, when you go through the entire book, every page, all through, it's basically this. Ritual, sacrifices here and there, what animals, how to kill them, what you're supposed to do if you commit this sin, so on and so forth. So, as I said, this whole thing is basically giving us a purpose and the coming of Jesus. Plain and simple. So you have these sacrifices, as I said, of the animals for sins. But this is Old Testament. We know Jesus, New Testament. So basically what it's essentially going to be telling us is these people have basically evolved from sacrificing animals. Plain and simple. Trust me, the Rothschilds and them is not in the basement, cutting chickens' throats and stuff like that. They have evolved from sacrificing animals to sacrificing us. Plain and simple. That's all you hear about when people talk about this stuff. Ritual sacrifice. Plain and simple. Human beings. It's far more power from us than from a goat or a lamb. Plain and simple. Far more they can do. And this is what they have been doing because they have us trapped to where we're breaking universal law. So yes, we know this stuff as voodoo, but it wasn't called that. It was gone by another name way back then. This was normal. It was stuff that we seen in the ancient world. So you've seen what we call voodoo in ancient Kemet. There are many depictions, many reliefs of the Egyptians doing the exact same thing as far as animal sacrifice because they understood the power of it. And just like we know, the Greeks followed the Egyptians. So in ancient Greece, we see the same thing. We see the altar, the whole nine in ancient Greece. See, if you're not studying their history, you're not going to figure this stuff out and see it. It's right in front of your face. So as I said, when you go against universal law, when you break these laws, you can be put as a sacrifice. And it's all in ancient Greek culture. We see them sacrificing humans, people. And when you go to the museums and look at the pottery, it's there. It's in the history, it's in the culture, the sacrifice and the rituals, because they understood universal law. And this is what they did. In ancient Samaria, all throughout the ancient world, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, we find ritual sacrifice. So it's not as if this is new because they're giving it to us in Leviticus. This is something they put there to make up for the fact that they know when people go back and look at the ancient customs, this stuff was already there, and they're trying to make it as if it's from God. Now, in the voodoo part 2, what did I show you? What did I tell you? How the Catholic Church is accepting of this voodoo practice, but not officially, and how these voodoo law, how they correspond with many Catholic saints. We talked about this. So you understand now why you have the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church going hand in hand with voodoo on many different things. Now, Jesus represents that sacrifice. We are Jesus. Plain and simple. So you have this Leviticus, Old Testament, talking about the sacrifice. Who's performing these sacrifices? The Jews, who are really the Greeks. Plain and simple. Who's controlling all this stuff today? We know. The Greeks. Who are, you go into the Rothschild family, everything like that. It's fair game. As I talked about in Exodus, the sacrifice of the Jews, those people. Burnt offering, sacrifice for what? For power, for them to establish Israel as a nation. So we have already seen and have proof of the sacrifice of human lives, people. We've seen it with 9/11, Pearl Harbor, what have you. This is what they're doing. All these mass shootings and everything. It's all fair game. It took them a long time to get to this point. And, you're going to begin to understand what I mean by that later. Because it's deep. And, we are all fair game. We're in this system willingly. So you have the Greeks being the ones, the Jews being the ones doing all these sacrifices. And then you go and you look at the world and look at who's in power. Look at where the so-called Jews are at as far as power. Why? How? Because their religion, their entire lifestyle is based upon an ancient ritual of power that is basically coinciding with universal law. Plain and simple. They actually really sacrifice for the Passover and then eat the animal. All the rituals, everything is built within a religion. It's all built in there. Meanwhile, we go and we follow what the Jews are giving us, the entertainment industry. I mean, look at it. It's huge. And it's crazy because people just can't put it together. They can't fathom it. The same people, we watching them grow in power, take over everything. The Jews, they end everything. The whole entertainment industry that we follow, and they using us. Black people, celebrities, got us following us, breaking universal law. And we just falling victim to it. Meanwhile, they do the right thing and they growing in wealth while they give us the bullshit. It's right there. And it's what's happening. And the people who can see it, you have people, and I heard a lot of people talk about this before with Hitler. People want to praise Hitler. Oh, Hitler, he wasn't so bad because, the Jews are bad. So Hitler wasn't a bad guy because, he sacrificed Jews. And that's people who just don't understand and get it. Now, talked about this before, how, of course, it was all set up and planned anyway. But even still, of course, he knew what he was doing. He knew it's all a sham. Plain and simple. It wasn't that, he was just sympathetic and understood these people was scam artists or what have you. No, they created them. He's a part of the people who created them in the first place. They ain't real people. I mean, it's common sense. They created these people out of thin air. They mixed them and created these people. You don't see these people before the 4th century BCE. We know who was in those lands, as I talked about. So, it's all artificial. It's all artificial. But, I mean, it's just so deep. I mean, y'all understand. It's like I'm trying not to give away so much. Even as I go through this, my mind just goes to where this stuff is at. It's deep, man. It's crazy. Because, the people behind it... what they doing and how this whole thing is set up is it's mind-boggling when you really grasp it, and I had to step back and deal with it and look at it, every day and just be like, then jump online and see us fighting each other and stupid shit that we do and the stuff we talk about is like, man, we so screwed sometimes when you really get into it. It's like, damn, we got to figure this shit out. It's one of the reasons why I put this stuff out so y'all can get the trap. Man, what they doing to us, what they done to us. It's the same people. The shit is old. And, I mean, the stuff that we talk about is just nowhere near, scratching the surface of the overall problem. We had never touched it before. We never touched it. Never touched the real problem. We can talk about a bunch of shit that don't matter, caught up in the system that they gave us. So while we sitting here worried about celebrity gossip and, Nicki Minaj and fucking Cardi B and all that. What are we talking about? This is nothing. The stuff they gave us. The very people who put us in this situation in the first place. They're giving us this stuff. They creating the gossip for us to talk about while they take over everything. It's crazy. So now, of course, the whole ritual sacrifice that's taking place, that power is only going to, the ones at the top, the Jews you see in Israel and what have you that's scattered around. They are basically slaves to the religion. They're not really reaping the benefits as much as the people at the top are because they're getting energy, just that simple. So talked about before how when you go back to the earliest representation of Judaism and Christianity, it was always shown the lamb with the cross as being the sacrifice. And we know Jesus, the Lamb of God. Jesus, the sacrificial lamb, sacrifice for sins. That's what he died for. As I said, us being Jesus. So it's giving you human sacrifice. I mean, that's what it is. It's giving that to you clear as day. You have the sacrifice right here in Leviticus of the animals for sins. And nobody, because motherfuckers ain't reading the book, never put it together to jump up to when Jesus come and he dies to end all this shit. And as I said, it's all voodoo. Plain and simple. It's all voodoo. Same thing. We see it so many times, time and time again, what the voodoo priests using these methods to get what they want. And we call them primitive because that's what it was. This is where they got it from themselves. Now, when I was first studying Leviticus, when I first was getting into this stuff, and a lot of this stuff in this series we're going to be going through, I have books and books and books and notes from when I first was studying the Bible. But, even reading it in the beginning, and grasping what Leviticus is talking about, you still, at that point in time, I was skeptical, we know about animal sacrifice and everything, but I was really knowledgeable about ancient deities. That's one of the things I first got into. So what gave it away in Leviticus is Leviticus 20. Plain and simple. This would basically told you exactly what they're doing. So it's saying here, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, again, thou shalt say to the children of Israel, whosoever he be of the children of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn in Israel, that giveth any of his seed unto Moloch, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. And I will set my face against that man, and will cut him off from among his people. Well, they stone him to death. You ain't got to cut him off. He's dead. Because he hath given of his seed unto Moloch, to defile my sanctuary and to profane my holy name. So now, Moloch is supposed to be the god of the Canaanites and Amorites. So the fact that they gave us Moloch in the first place, when you understand history, the fact that they mention him here, where it's supposed to be Hebrews, and they're talking about Moloch, when you understand about the history of Moloch and where all this stuff is coming from, Greek. Plain and simple. It's crazy. That there tells you right there who wrote this stuff. Oh my goodness, it's crazy. So the fact that they're giving us Moloch is a hint to everything. First of all, we know about Moloch and them sacrificing the babies. And again, to get into this, which we'll dig in this more deeper down the line, and understand, of course, the power that you get from that, and it's crazy. But the hint is there, with the Moloch reference and understanding about Greek mythology, and not just Greek mythology, I should say, the customs of the Greeks long before the Bible ever existed. So again, as I said, the worship of Moloch been around for a long time, long before the Greeks ever conquered anything, long before any type of Hebrew or Jew ever existed or what have you. So we know the ancient Egyptians worshiped the sun, and we know that the Greeks was following the ancient Egyptians, and they too, of course, was worshiping the sun and revering and venerating the sun. So Moloch represents the sun. So does Bel, or Baal, however you want to pronounce it. And they worship the sun. So what we had the Greeks do was basically combine the two and give us Moloch Bel. So we're saying here, child sacrifices to Moloch and Bel. All in all, the symbolic location and rituals similarities between Moloch and Bel suggest the two once isolated and region-specific entities were perhaps synthesized in Tophet sometime between 1000 and 500 BC. Moloch and Bel commonly found as combined deities after this date, as can be seen in the case of the Greek city of Palmyra, where they worship the sun god named Moloch Bel as late as 500 AD. And after 500 AD, we start to see that stuff disappear. Those worship of a lot of deities, which we know, Constantine, we know a lot of the papacies and all of them went in and just, as it talked about in the Bible, went in and ripped out all the idols, all the worship, all the old stuff they was worshiping in all these different countries, they got rid of, they wiped out. So this stuff couldn't be traced back because they were stealing it. Plain and simple. They were stealing the stories, they were stealing it, and it's in the Bible. Stuff is in there. Now it says, even when you look it up, West Semitic sun god and messenger god worship primarily in the ancient Syrian city of Palmyra. Now, again, you go back to ancient history. Talked about this before. Remember, who was that who set up the whole Syrian empire, who found Syria? We talked about this before. Remember, this goes back to the Diadochi with with Antiochus and everything, them going into Antioch and going into Syria and basically establishing that place. Again, these are Greeks. This is what this stuff go back to. You got to understand, when you're doing the research and you looking and you start seeing Antioch or Syria, Greeks. Anytime before the 4th century BCE, in that area being established, it's talking about Greeks. Primarily in the ancient Syrian city of Palmyra, he was variously identified by the Greeks with Zeus and with Hermes, and by the Romans with Sol, which we know is sun. His name may have been of Babylonian origin, and he was considered the equivalent of the Babylonian sun god Shamash. Engravings on the 4 sides of a marble altar in Palmyra depicts the 4 annual stages in the life of Moloch Bel, symbolizing the yearly sequence of the sun. Most other representations portray Moloch Bel with Aglabal, the moon god. Now, also here it's giving us the comparison, Bel and Baal, and the Baal of the Baalabek was without doubt the same sun god. Merkabah, identical with him, were the fiery deities of Melkor of the Tyrians and of Baal Molech of the Amorites, worshipped by the Israelites. Jeremiah 32:35. It's so many references we can give when talking about Merkabah and about Baal and all that. Seen it in the Bible. Again, when you start getting into this stuff, you see where it came from and the history of it, which is why history is important, because when you start to first find this stuff, it's always pertaining to the Greeks, plain and simple. So it all fits, as I said, as us seeing where the stuff came from, who gave it to us. The reason why Ptolemy II Philadelphus end up, the whole Septuagint story and LXX, going through the Greeks, is, come on, whoever smelt it dealt it, plain and simple. It's because the Greeks was the one who gave it to us. It's just that simple. It's easy to see when you start going through the history. So the fact that they put that in there, to me, in Leviticus, to relate it to human sacrifice and the sacrifices that was going on back then, it's them telling you straight up who these people is. It's the Greeks. So now I talked about before about the whole relation with Minerva and Moloch. A lot of people see the owl at Bohemian Grove and they call it Moloch. And a lot of people know that owl to be dealing with Minerva. And a lot of people know Moloch to be, the bull that was basically, sacrificing the kids or what have you. But the thing is, it's one and the same when you really understand. We know the whole Minerva, again, dealing with the Greeks. Minerva would be, she's the patron saint of Greek fraternities. Delta Sigma Theta is one of the sororities that has her as the patron saint. You see her in the logo. They even have a Minerva circle in a fraternity, in a sorority. So we see this stuff, again, dealing with the Greeks. All this stuff is going back to the Greeks. Stuff ain't, they don't put the stuff there for no reason. They know what the stuff is going to go back to. At this point, they don't care, but when you start for research sake, it's easy to see. Trace it all the way back to the Greeks. They're the ones who gave it to us in the first place. But we can look at Moloch and we look at this worship and everything. We know where this stuff comes from. We know what comes from Kemet, plain and simple. It comes from Apis, plain and simple. Now, I showed you when I went to the whole Cairo Museum in Egypt, the whole statue of Serapis. Everybody knew about Serapis, and we know they got it from Apis, the bull. And we know the whole worship of Moloch and going back and dealing with the Greeks, it's just them. It's Apis. That's where they get it from. That's what they do. So when you read history of worship, this is for Apis. Skip down here. It says ceremonial burials of bulls indicate that ritual sacrifice was part of the worship of the early cow deities Hathor and Ba'at. And a bull might represent her offspring, a king who became a deity after death. Now, let me get into this real quick because I don't want to leave you guys out there hanging. So, I talked about this before, I believe, but you may have ran across some Hebrews that's talking about Dr. King being in the Bible. And this is where they draw that from. So, when you understand about Molech, and you understand it's talking about a king here. Now, MLK means king when you get into this whole thing. And I'll show you here. So, MLK means king. So a lot of people draw the MLK king from the name of Moloch and, the bull, which represents a ritual sacrifice. And, so MLK, you have king, we got Dr. Martin Luther King, who, ritual sacrifice, the whole nine. This is where they get it from. So if you ever come across a Hebrew that's talking about this, this is where they get it from, just to not leave you hanging. This is where they'll say, well, Dr. King is in the Bible, but we know how they write things, and it's easy for you to make this stuff come true when you understand what's already there. And again, one of the reasons why they probably got the whole statue, no doubt King was a sacrifice. We all know that. And he was a patsy. He was used to, as I talked about. But yeah, this is what they're talking about if you ever heard them getting into the whole MLK thing in the Bible. But bull might represent her offspring, a king who became a deity after death. He was entitled the renewal of life of the Memphite deity Ptah, but after death he became, now this is just abbreviation for basically Osiris Apis, which I talked about. Just as their humans were assimilated to Osiris, the ruler of the underworld, the Osiris Apis was identified with Serapis of the late Hellenistic period and may well be identical with him, creating parallels to their own religious beliefs. Ancient Greek writers identify Apis as an incarnation of Osiris, ignoring the connection with Ptah. during the start of the Hellenistic period, Ptolemy Soter, who ruled for the period of 323 to 283 BCE, moved the core locum of worship of the Apis from Memphis to Alexandria. No matter how much digging you do, you're going to keep running into these Greeks in its book. Plain and simple. And the fact that when you start tying this stuff in and this leads you to the Ptolemies, I mean, come on. It's enough said right there. But we know, Moloch, Apis, and, Apis basically representing being sacrificed and reborn. Plain and simple. So, I mean, it all fits there. Understand the children sacrifice and it representing being sacrificed and reborn. So, again, we're going to find this a lot of things going back to the Greeks, and I'm going to touch on, every single time. Now, also, we got to remember that Kronos is associated with Moloch. So this is why we see Moloch dealing with child sacrifice, and you see the whole image of Kronos eating babies. This whole thing goes together. It's the same type of thing. Whole thing goes in with Greek mythology, Kronos and a sacrifice, eating babies. And as I pointed out, and as we know, when you're reading in Leviticus, when you're reading in the Bible, it's talking about the Hebrews eating their babies. And I touched on this. As a matter of fact, I mean, like one of the things is just crazy. I don't care what sin you break, what commandment you broke, or what you did. It's supposed to be God. I mean, for anybody that got a brain, it's supposed to be God, for these Christians or what have you that believe this stuff. God, who's supposed to create your soul and your body, that would allow a woman, allow you to, get pregnant and carry a child for 9 months, only, for that child to be born and eaten by his parents. What kind of shit is that? These people crazy. So it's talking about here, Leviticus, just 26, chapter 26, 27 through 30. Read here. And if you will not for all this hearken unto me, but walk contrary unto me, then I will walk contrary unto you, also in fury, and even I, will chastise you 7 times for your sins, and ye shall eat the flesh of your sons, and the flesh of your daughters ye shall eat, and I will destroy your high places, and cut down your images, and cast your carcasses upon the carcasses of your idols, and my soul shall abhor you. Goddamn. It's crazy. It's crazy when you get into it and you start reading it. And this is the part of one of the parts of the Bible that a lot of people just don't read and don't see. I always tell people, there's so much crazy stuff in this book that's supposed to be from this rational God. I think if any Christian actually read the Bible, they would run. They'd walk away from it like, get the fuck out. This can't be right. And this is why a lot of people go into the whole corrupt Bible thing, because, verses like that and stuff like that just don't make no sense. And a lot of people choose to remain blind to it and delusional and just go with the whole thing as well as God. He can do whatever he wants, even when it's stupid and it don't make sense, even when it's evil and cruel and nasty. So, it's in there. So now when you start looking at the whole thing, recapping, you can see, it's just basically giving us history. And, for time's sake, it's a lot of stuff, I didn't want to really elaborate on too much and get into, which we'll come back and touch on as it's necessary. But, from Genesis, giving us the creation of the soul and the spirit, what have you, and the understanding about how the white race was basically infiltrating us and taking over. Same thing we understand with Exodus, with the fall of Kemet. It's basically giving us that metaphorically, even though in the Bible, when the Jews left, if you pertain it to real history, the Egyptians was fine, but it's really alluding to them screwing them over. Then, that's when the rise of the Europeans basically begins. And they disguise that with the Hebrew Israelites and them basically saying that God is giving them the power to help them fight all these battles or wipe all these people out. But we know it's the Greeks and the whole Hellenization going on and them basically going through our territories and conquering and killing our people and destroying all of our history and everything that we had. Gone, wiped out. That's basically what it's really saying. You have them with the Exodus establishing this whole church falsity, which basically is them basically saying, okay, that happened. Then we established Judaism. We indoctrinated people and established Judaism is basically what they're saying when it's talking about them setting up the church. And them setting up the church, what they really was doing was basically hiding the rituals, teaching the people who need to be taught certain things and how to use, certain sacrifices. So they've basically been using these sacrifices from that point in time to grow in power and to get to certain positions, which leads us up into, basically now with the human sacrifice after Jesus come. But we ain't that far yet, but just saying we know that's what it's about. Quick recap, and you can see, when it's getting into this sacrifice thing now, that it's touching back on what they was doing. It all pertains to them anyway, no matter how you slice it. Now, and I talked about this before, like even when I was showing you guys the whole commercial with Matthew McConaughey, when he says, that's Osiris, talking about the bull in the street. I mean, it's everywhere. You're not going to escape it. It's everywhere. The bull down in Wall Street, the fact that it's symbolically everywhere you look, you find the stuff. And all the sacrifices we've been seeing going on, and it's all ritual sacrifices. What they've been using, as I said, in voodoo, to gain control and to continue doing what they have been doing for hundreds of years. And so early in the Bible, Leviticus, we can put all that together. So there's a lot more that's really going to, make this stuff stick and get you to understand a lot more stuff as we go. And it's a lot of stuff you'll find as you start digging into this stuff and connecting those dots. And again, knowing history is important and understanding that don't go by what they're telling you. And I always say this before, are we just going to go by what the books say or just go by what they're saying or what everybody else saying? What's the point of doing the research? What's the point of looking if we just going to follow what these people are saying? You got to look deeper. I always say if it don't fit, question it, look deeper, because a lot of times stuff is put there not to fit. You just got to figure out where it really does fit and get clarity on it before you just accept it as fact. And I don't really like accepting anything, to tell you the truth. All this shit is up in the air to me. I always tell people everything that I teach and everything, go research for yourself and go look in. Make sure you got clarity when it's said and done and that you really understand and get it. Sometimes you might have to watch my videos twice, but I want you to be clear and get this. I mean, to me, so far, to this point, it's clear as day. I know because I know, but for you guys, you may be still on the fence a little bit. But like I said, if you've been watching everything, you should be cool. So now, as I said, they evolved from sacrificing animals to sacrificing us, plain and simple, to basically doing what we see these voodoo priests do. And coincidentally, well, not coincidentally, Leviticus translates to the law of the priests. And one of the things you got to look at is that word, priest, just that word. We know it wasn't no Catholic Church established during this point in time. The only people that would equate to a name or a title like priest is not practicing any kind of Judaism bullcrap, but exactly what they're telling us in Leviticus, which would be ritual sacrifice animals, voodoo, so to speak. However you want to pronounce it, whatever they called it back then, is giving you that hint right there when it's telling you priest. Look up the word in the etymology. All this stuff is going to start going back to Greek, plain and simple. That's what it's going to go back to. And this is what they're trying to tell you. They're giving you the hints. They're giving you what you need to know. You just got to know how to pull it out and fit it to where it's supposed to go. So they got to look at it and see how deep this stuff is. So you have, for this long period of time, as I said, you got these Jews who have incorporated this ancient ritual into their daily life, their practice, and understanding universal law and using this stuff to gain power and grow in power. They know what it's going back to, and they're using it to go back to what it's supposed to go back to. But the thing is, they have now convinced billions of people around the world. I mean, think about this, billions of people. We have grown up to when we get our food, when the food is on the table, what we do, we pray. We pray to who? God. Plain and simple. Who is God? Who's the powers that be? So that whole setup of that ritual is going back to them. So while you got these billions of people praying, that energy is going back to them in the first place. All these people holding hands and bowing their heads, praying to these damn Greeks, praying to these Jews. Plain and simple. And God, we trust them, nobody else. And people coming together, and it's just like the sacrifice of the animal. Animal has been sacrificed, and now it's being prayed over by people giving the energy away, to the system, to the powers that be. Billions of people all over, probably right now as we speaking. So they get it. They understand it. This stuff is not done for a reason. We've been trained. They smart. They know what they're doing. They know how this stuff works. And to us, it's, I don't know if I pray or not. So what? It's simple, stupid stuff to us because we don't understand energy. To us, it's nothing. A lot of people still not gonna really grasp what that mean and understand why Hov wants you to put that whole Rockefeller diamond up. Why people want you to sing these songs and why they want you to attach your energy to certain things. Why this whole music industry is out there, they get it. TV, all this stuff, us giving our energy to certain things. And a lot of it is having us on the outside of universal law and open to sacrifice and open to a bunch of bullshit. Because we not in tune. We're out of tune like a motherfucker. We not doing things right. And that's the thing. And it's one of the things that, a lot of scholars touched on. A lot of people who really understand energy understand how out of sync we are and how we lend our energy to just so much garbage. It's crazy. It's a lot to understand. It's a lot to learn. So now, as I said in Exodus, with the Egyptians, understanding, one, the Egyptians was basically neutral. They had no aspirations of global domination or anything like that. These was truly spiritual people who had power, who understood what they was doing. And you got to realize, as I said, the Greeks seeing its power, understanding that, it's a lot they can do with it. And once they got their hands on it, they used their understanding of energy to basically begin to take over. Plain and simple. So again, as I talked about in Exodus, them basically having to, bring forth some Hebrews. They need to produce these people at some point. You got to get the Africans out of here. We got to get these Israelites created. And as I said, it's a lot. When you really think about that, what has to go into that? I mean, even when you just think about them having to really get these Arabs on board with coming into Greece, but it's easy when you understand. So we know who are the Arabs. What are the Arabs? Now, I talked about this before in Buddhism, how you had the Aryans come down into the Indus Valley. So the Indus Valley, when you understand it, you have Indians. That all that area was Indian people all in that area, which is why we find Buddha. You find them in Afghanistan. Remember, they blew up the big Buddha statue in Afghanistan. This is where Indians was, where Buddhism began, of course. And you have the Aryans come down and basically mix in with the people of the Indus Valley and with the Indians to give us the Arabs. Plain and simple. And that's all they are. That's all they are. You have white people mixing in with Indians to give us the Arab race. They created and brought into Israel to begin this whole deception. Plain and simple. So when we look around, it's deep. We look around the world and we see all the places that they infiltrated, and it's easy to see because the people got brighter. So even when you go into the whole Indus Valley, you have the creation of the Arabs, who look how they look. They are light. And since, the Indians are from Africa, it's melanin in them, but still, they grow lighter because of the whole bombardment of the Aryans, who completely, created a whole other race of people, from that. And they worked their way over, to Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, China, Japan, and of course will eventually get over into the Aborigines over there in Australia and in New Zealand or what have you. They went all the way across and infiltrated all the way in. You can't go to any continent and not find them. So we had later, when the Spain was taken away from the Moors, as I talked about, the Romans coming in there, and you have, the Latin. A lot of people just, they never put that together. Remember, you had the whole slave trade. You have the Spaniards coming down into South America, mixing in with those people who were basically Africans or Aborigines down in South America. And then you had the Spaniards coming down, mixing in with them to give us, the Portuguese and Spaniard, which is basically, Romans, coming down into South America to give us the Dominicans and the Puerto Ricans. Plain and simple. They don't even know who they are. Mixing them with those people because of the slave trade and because of the, just the trade, the whole commodities trade or what have you, whatever they was trading, whatever was going down there to get. They was mixing them with those people, and that's where you get your Dominicans and Puerto Ricans. Plain and simple. And it's a global, just a whitening. And we see this mix, them mixing it with everybody to create opposition to us, the original man, and to confuse. Plain and simple. And they basically are at the forefront of these races of people. And again, it's one of those things where you got to look at the Chinese, you got to look at the Japanese, and look at these different races and say, what is it? So when the Bible is talking about God, they being God's chosen people, and we understanding that God is basically the powers that be. What is it talking about? It's something that they know, because at some point, as I said, these people all came together and agreed to wipe us out of history, even in their own countries. They came together and agreed to screw us. Plain and simple. We see the cover up. Now, as time passed, and really don't matter no more, they already got their foot in there, already accomplished so much, they don't care what history is leaked out, But we see, as I said, when I went to Thailand, I had to go into the museum to see the black faces and everything like that. But when you go into the ruins, it's there. They left their ruins. And when you go and look at some of these ruins, it's like, why they leave? It's amazing there. They left this stuff because they don't want the people understanding their history, understanding that they come from blackness, from darkness. So that was one of the things that they decreed, that these ruins is going to be tourist attractions. Y'all get out of there, get these people moved somewhere else. So they don't understand where they came from and understand the history, that they was dark skinned. And we see all the statues and everything start turning white. And it's an agreement, as I said, that they had to basically whitewash history, and they all in on it for whatever reason. So it's like, who is this power? Whoever's controlling this white race, what are they? Who are they? That they could have the ages and everybody in agreement to basically allow, these white people to run everything, to take over. That's deep. Something to think about. I don't think people understand how, deep this stuff goes. And one of the things is, if you're going to have a goal, if you want to take over North Africa, you have to, one of the lands you have to take is exactly what they took. I mean, you want Italy, you want Greece, Turkey, you want Spain. You want to be right there. You can keep your eye on North Africa, Kemet, all that stuff is like right there. But then you got to look at the entire area, which, we call Europe. And I don't think people understand all of this is white. Plain and simple. You look at the Serbians, the Serbs and everybody in all these Albania, all these other countries or what have you, white. If they didn't speak and you just seen them, you wouldn't know what they was. Plain and simple. So it's a lot of them. It's a lot of territory, a lot of land that they took that was ours. And again, when it's going into these lands that's taken in the Bible, we got to understand that these lands, of course, was occupied by African people. The whole system there is just like the East Coast. I mean, you have a winter, you have summer. That's how it is. So winter and summer. Same thing up in Sweden. A lot of people say, hey, it's cold up there in Sweden. In South Sweden, where I live at, it's just like Philly. It's the same. It has a winter, it has a summer. Plain and simple. And it don't get much snow in the south. The north is where it gets mostly snow. So even that far north, where you go any more north from North Sweden, you in the North Pole, that far north you get a lot of snow. But even still, they have a summer. And I showed you guys, if you follow me on Instagram, I showed you guys where it's 24-hour sun from the end of June to like the end of August, where the sun is out all day, 24 hours. It acts like it's going to go down and it comes back up. So it's always sun. So, these lands, this stuff. And it's almost as if, when you get into Genesis, it's talking about, almost as if it's telling us these people have been made. These people have just come out of nowhere and just start taking over. And you got to look at this and understand. So I talked about before on the videos on YouTube how they come from us. And I talked about, the whole genome sequencing and how we could just look at ourselves and see that, of course, we got some damn chimpanzee, some ape DNA in us. We share genes with them. There's no doubt about that. So on that same sense, I haven't seen a monkey evolve into a man. I have not seen it. So we know somebody had to do something, some kind of spices, some kind of genetic experimentation to create us with those genes that we have from monkeys and platypuses and possums and everything like that. That is a fucking experiment right there. So on the same token, we got to look at it and understand that something was done to us for this mutation to occur. Now, we can't say the same thing and say we don't see black people turning into white people, because we see it. We seen black people have white folks, so we can't say. But something is done for that to happen, that for, millions of years, nothing but black. Then all of a sudden, we basically give birth to our enemy. And, this is deep. We're going to get into this down the line, where that all fits, because this is crazy. It's too much to get into right now. But again, we could trace this back. We can start getting into Leviticus, but it's not so much we need to really dig into Leviticus. It's the same thing with Exodus. Exodus giving us the law, yada, yada, yada. Leviticus, when you go through it, if you have read it, I bullshit you not, get your Bible. It's just talking about, if you do this, sacrifice that. Blood here, splattered there. Aaron, Moses, tell a congregation. There's not too much we need to really get into as far as just reading through it, which you can do yourself, but in understanding what this stuff is pertaining to, as far as what they used, what they was using when they rise to power, which is the sacrifices and energy, and being in accordance with universal law. So to me, in looking at it and understanding what's going on, it's alarming when you look at history, look at what's going on. As I talked about before, with these African countries having, presidents and constitutions. Anytime you see that anywhere in the world, it's a part of the system. It's dug in. So we're seeing this stuff. But, you just also see the spreading, all over the world of, just them taking over. White folks everywhere. You travel as much as I do, when the airport is crowded, it's mostly white people dominating more than anybody else. White people and Asians. So you see more than anybody else, very few melanated faces. And that's deep. That's crazy. Man, if you watch HGTV, just watch HGTV. They have shows like Bahama Life and Island Life, stuff like that. And you just see, every episode almost, white people moving to the Bahamas, moving to the Caribbean, it's crazy. Just moving into these different islands and taking over. And the same thing where you have House Hunters International, them moving to different countries all over and just moving and traveling to where they have created a system that leave us, melanated people, black people, stuck. We can't travel. We can't go and spread out like they are. And that's by design, So when you look at all these different places, it's like, if you white, you can basically seem like they can go anywhere, set up shop. And nobody says nothing. It's like they have this privilege to just go and do anything, anywhere. And we can't. We can't, live in certain places, be in certain places. Rules and regulations, all this stuff set against us. What's going on? It's so deep. And then, we can't look at it and get stressed out and feel some type of way about it. We need to understand why, because that's fear right there. That's what it is. When you have so many roadblocks and walls and so much stuff, they're constantly bombarding us with so much shit to keep us down and hold us back. Why? For what? What are they scared of? We don't get an inch. Why? As I talked about, they understand, they know if we get a hold of this shit, we never losing it again. We ever wake up, it's game. It's game. And it's deep. It's deep. And it's one of the reasons why I'm trying to wake us the fuck up. Because we need to know. We need to figure this stuff out and move forward. But, they jumped into so many different civilizations. And we see the color change. And, we see melanated people, which they don't want to admit. In Africa, it's way more than they telling us. It's way more black people, way more Africans down there. And and to have that many Africans and control that much wealth and money, and they understand that it's infinite. Oodles of wealth, gold, diamonds, or what have you that's there. They know what's there. That if we ever got our shit together and controlled it, we would control it. And they would have to try to come up with some shit and justify killing a bunch of Africans, bombing them out, which is why they're doing it in silence with this, eugenics or what have you, and these shots that they're giving people and making people impotent and all that kind of stuff like that. They're controlling it in so many slow, different ways and running people out of Africa. It's a matter of time, people. It's just a matter of time where we're going to be gone. Plain and simple. May not be in this lifetime. Definitely won't be in this lifetime. Might not even be in the next 2 lifetimes. But this is where they're heading, And it's for a reason, It's all for a reason, all heading towards a lot of different things. And when we get into Revelations, which is down the road, it'll fit. It's all going to come together, man. It's all going to come together. It's a lot. But I don't want to waste time and really get too much into this book of stuff that don't really matter. Because for the most part, a lot of these stories are just that. They're stories. To get you caught up in them and to get your mind off of what this stuff is really talking about. Which is Leviticus is giving you voodoo. Plain and simple. It's easy as day. Don't really got DVDs on voodoo. Don't really got to get into it too much here. But that's what it's talking about. So, when you start talking to these Hebrews and, these Bible believers, one of the things that they have to do is keep you in the Bible. That's why they'll never want to go outside. As you see here, we're going outside the Bible. This is how you break it down to figure out what it's really talking about, is to go outside the book. The Hebrews and the Christians want to keep you in that book, keep you in the fairy tales, plain and simple. They want to keep you in it. And one of the things, as I talked about in the video on YouTube, is really understanding what this whole power and energy thing is about. It's deep. So to really, and we're not going to get into it too deeply here, but later, but, to get it and understand, what this energy transfer, this energy is about, what's going on, and to understand what the ancestors is really about. I always get a lot of questions about that, and a lot of people are confused because, one, you have to just really ask yourself something. A lot of people believe that we just talking to these, like when somebody die, they die and they soul is just out there somewhere waiting for us to get in contact with them. And you have a lot of these medium shows and a lot of stuff to basically really thank for that bullshit, because that's what it is. People that's telling you that fairies and spirits and everything that's out there and all this stuff like that. And a lot of people want to believe it, but come on, if you're going to believe all that stuff, you might as well be a Christian. If you want to believe it, if you want to believe it's fairies out there and these spirits that's out there, if you want to believe that these fairies and spirits are our ancestors, you might as well be a Christian. You might as well be religious, because you got to understand, one, if we're talking about this power and people getting in contact with these spirits, because this is what people is going to tell you, got in contact with the spirits and, spirits told me this. Okay, well, how come the spirits ain't fixing this shit then? If these the spirits of our ancestors who was basically duped by these people, fix it. If they got the knowledge and know-how, give us the information, help us out, use your spiritual powers to help us in somehow, some way, but nothing. And half of the time, most of these people that's talking to spirits ain't got shit. They have nothing. They don't got nothing. So how come the spirits ain't helping you, that you broke and you need money? So who is these spirits that you supposedly have contact with? So you have to understand, what that's about and what the ancestors and this energy and everything really is, what it pertains to. And it's you. As I always told you, if you follow my videos and follow what I talk about, it's you. It's always been us. You can take it back. Let's take it back to the matriarchal society, as I talked about the women being here first and creating themselves first. So that mother creating that first child and her transferring her energy, a portion of it, which is infinite, into that offspring. Remember, can't create the energy. You can't create it. Can't be created, can't be destroyed. Only transferred from one form to another. So when that baby is created, it's just transferred. Your energy into the child. Boom, here you have the child. Features like the mother. It's the first hint. Second, traits like the mother or the grandmother or what have you. That's the second hint, that it's the same energy. So if you go by the whole notion of spirits and fairies or what have you, where's that energy coming from? If you're going by that notion, that's saying that every child that's born, a new energy is created for them, when we know that's not possible. So when we're talking about ancestors, it's us, because those energies are linked. Plain and simple. We've all seen the stories of kids, 6, 7, 8, whatever, what have you, having memories of past lives, having memories, being able to tell people who they was, how they was killed, and who killed them, in the past life. And they've been validated. Go back to the Buddhists, I should say. I talked about in the Buddhism series, how they do the rituals, the whole Tibetan monks, how they do the rituals where the child goes and picks, the items of who they was in the past life. So when a child is born and they start resembling traits of somebody who passed around the time that, they came into existence, they say, you know what, the child reminds me of such and such who passed, and the time adds up. So in order to tell, they do that little experiment where the child goes in and picks certain items. So what is that saying? It's telling you that that energy has crossed over and made it and been passed, into a new form, a new child. So it's not new energy. So excuse me, to have people believing that it's these spirits out there that's our ancestors and everything like that, just trapped somewhere in forests, and they just sitting there and people trying to communicate with them. That's retarded. A lot of people got that whole thing from Avatar. So with Avatar, remember, they had them connecting with the trees and getting the information from the ancestors, what have you. But a lot of people didn't get that metaphor, what it was really saying. A tree. What is a tree? You have a family tree. Plain and simple. You have a family tree. You have a tree of life. You have, your spine. You have your energy, your bloodline. All this stuff is all metaphorically talking about you, family. That tree is all connected. All of you are connected, all on the same tree. Plain and simple. It's all you. So, different physical forms, but all the same energy. Plain and simple. So you should be able to communicate what, your past energy. It was your energy at one point. So the whole point is to tap into it. Now, here's the thing. Here's the kicker to all that. And this is a little bit deeper. We shouldn't get into this now, but yeah, we can talk about it. But the kicker to that is to understand that who is it that we really need to be contacting as far as ancestors? That's the issue. What I mean by that is, anybody who you would try to communicate with as far as an ancestor or a relative in, our generations, what do they know? What information do they know? The energy was passed down to you. The knowledge was passed down to you. And they never got that knowledge on how to transcend. So you can only get but so much information from, if you could, conjure up that energy from yourself. Which is, damn near impossible to do, hard to do for people who don't really understand, how to do it. So for some of us, we naturally inherit things from our parents, grandparents. Somebody might say, okay, you look like your grandma, or you can sing like your grandma, or you can draw like your grandma. And we get those traits, but as far as memories, and that's totally different. That's a whole different thing that we not there yet no more to be able to draw on that and pull those answers out. But then again, we would have to go way back, farther than we can really imagine, to find somebody that's in that energetic line to give us the answers that we need. So when people are talking about connecting with the ancestors and talking to them, we're talking about real ancient ancestors. We're talking about, beings who, if they have the answers, we shouldn't be able to connect with them. Not in this life, not here. I mean, it shouldn't be possible, but they know it is possible. They understand that it's possible. They understand that we have the potential to do so, which is why they're trying so hard to keep us from understanding the process of doing it. I talked about this with the ancient Egyptians. Remember, as I said, when it came up, when it was beginning their journey from Ethiopia up to Kemet, and I said those pyramids was already there. But remember, where did they get the notion to do it? Where did they get the notion, the idea, the know-how to go up to Kemet and not only, go there, but then begin to reestablish these dynasties and these amazing things they did? Again, remember, the pyramids was there when they got there, but you still got to, if you ever been to Kemet, you still have to look at the other unbelievable things that the dynasties built. That's amazing that we still can't really replicate to this day. So they was getting that information from somewhere. So they was at some point, they was in contact, with the ancestors. And it was in contact because, it was them. They was understanding this information. And understanding this energy was to them as normal as them just having a thought. And them being able to know and understand the process. So, what the energetic sacrifices and what they doing as far as the exchanging the energy for what they want, putting the energy towards something to happen for them and them understanding how that process works. That's what they doing. And it's probably a more deeper or more advanced process to the whole thing that I don't think they can do. So they have figured out other ways around it, which is why we start getting into this whole science thing, because that's basically what it is. Who's the scientists? Who's the eggheads? These people using science. It's almost like an abomination of them, splicing nature and their own little concoction to get something out of it. So since they can't do it naturally, science is the way they go. Physics, science, what have you, is what they're using now to do these things that they can't do, but only a melanated person can. So, getting back into Leviticus. Leviticus basically ends with Moses, finishing up the commandments and the laws and the rituals and what they need to do if they break the laws and everything like that. As I said, it's really not much more to really get into. When you read the Leviticus yourself, you'll see it's just sacrifice this, do that. Aaron's sons dying basically because they went against God's commandment and they burnt up or what have you. So that's like the only crazy thing that happened. A couple other things, but not really nothing esoterically that we really need to be getting into at this point. A couple things we're going to go back into later that's going to fit and you'll see. But for now, no, we good. So, but want to touch on that part and not really elaborate on it too much more with the whole voodoo thing because it's going to be coming up where it's going to fit more. So it's plain to see when you understand. You've seen the voodoo 1 and 2, as I talked about before, how they're using energy and using our energy to basically get ahead, and them just giving you validation in Leviticus of exactly that, what they was doing. And again, as I said, them foreshadowing and giving you the purpose and the reason for Jesus and his coming, and them basically saying how he's switching from the sacrifice of animals to the sacrifice of human beings. It's all there. And that's how they begin to grow. And we've seen, if anybody watch any of those National Geographic shows or what have you, how they talked about all the human sacrifices that was going on around that time. And the pagan stuff. And once they begin to understand energy, and something that I really don't want to touch on, but I will, because we got to get into all this whole homosexual thing with the men and what that's all about, and where we first start seeing it at, where? Greece. Wow. What is that? We're going to touch on that too, which is it's just deep, crazy stuff, and it'll really get you into the understanding of the church, the Catholic Church, and what that thing is about, them touching boys and all that. We got to get into it. We got to get into it because you got to know. I don't really want to, but we'll touch on it. It's definitely something you want to understand what that's about, because it's power and they understand it. So, it's deep. And, we got a lot of sellouts, and it's messed up when we look at, this whole situation. And as I talked about with the whole entertainment industry and who's controlling it, and that these people have been controlling us and have been at the forefront of our downfall and have caused it, the reason for our oppression, and how we work for them. We praise them. We watch them every single day. We give them money, all the time. And it's deep. It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy. I hate to say, I look at it and you're almost like, wow, it's a shocker. I don't want to say I'm impressed with it or anything like that, but it's a shocker. Like, damn, how complex it is, but simple. And it's complex and simple, plain and simple. But it relies on us, causing our own downfall. And that's the whole universal law part of it. And that's the whole part about they not breaking no laws, because they got us. They got us breaking it for them. They got us falling victim ourselves. I mean, when you really pay attention to everything that's going on, it's us. They're not doing nothing. It's almost like Saul, which is why Saul had so many Sauls, if you understood what it was talking about. This dude putting people in positions to survive. All they had to do was play the game, follow the rules, and do everything right. I set this stuff a certain way, and I did this, and I told them to do this. They were supposed to do that, but they fucked up and got themselves killed. And that's basically how he was trying to justify it as, this is a game. If they play the game right, do what they're supposed to do, don't be greedy, don't do this, then they'll live. And if you watch all the Sauls, you understand it's basically how it was. But a lot of people let the human kick in, and they end up, dying. It's the same thing as I said with The Walking Dead, same type of system. It's easy. The whole thing should have been wiped out. Everything should have been fixed by now with Walking Dead. But what's causing the downfall of the people? This whole human nature thing. People falling victim to greed and jealousy and, fear and everything. And we got this whole zombie problem. They can't get the shit together because they falling victim to human issues. It's stupid. But it's them, again, showing you how they got us and what they're doing. Us basically falling for all the bullshit when we could just fix it. We know the entertainment industry destroying us. We know that shit bad for us. We know it's a trap against us. Praise it every day. Praise it all the time. Cardi B. She getting so much praise now. She knocked up, pregnant, rapper, telling girls to fuck niggas for money. She getting praise from Oprah and from everybody else. And everybody making it like it's a big good thing. And this is the image we putting out to our kids, that you can go and be a stripper and do all this crazy stuff and then go rap about it and you'll be successful and everybody congratulate you for it. This is what we're telling our kids. That's what we're telling our kids. Look how they setting this up. And then you can't say that to people. Then people, oh, you corny. You don't know what you're talking about. You stupid. And we support the system that's just destroying us. And I've seen so-called conscious people put it in their timelines. People who follow me on Instagram. Cardi B and all these other celebrities. And, like I said, though, if you understand it, it's fine. If you understand what's going on and it's entertainment for you, then I can't really knock you for that. But as long as it's bullshit. And as long as when that occasion arises to call it bullshit, you call it bullshit, and you don't jump on the bandwagon and be like, oh, it's all right. Oh, she all right. And we got to stop thinking, everything's okay because white folks doing it, because white folks are involved. And we do that a lot too. So, you can't just talk about black people listening to hip hop. White folks listen to it too. Well, they running everything. They running the world, so they can do whatever the fuck they want. It's just that simple. Where we at? We at the bottom. The bottom. So, it's deep, when you start getting to this stuff. But again, when you start recapping and putting everything together, seeing how all this stuff fits, the Bible with Exodus and everything, how it goes into Leviticus with this same theme of the Hebrews basically wandering. So we know they're going to wander for 40 years or for however long they wander, and eventually end up where they're supposed to be at, and we're supposed to somehow ignore the absence of the Egyptians during this whole time, and them possibly looking for them after what happened. But again, doesn't fit with history, and we know this, the whole Ramses thing, that's the biggest giveaway. And it's just one of those things, again, where we can just clearly outright show you the problem in the Bible, and we can't get no vindication, justification for it. But we can show you clear as day that it doesn't fit with Ramses. No way in the world. Ramses was Pharaoh, and during this time of the Exodus. I talked about Thutmose the third, and only person that could have been around that time. But given the time frame they give us of the 15th century BCE, and none of that shit fits with Ramses. at all. It doesn't fit. So we can just kill that. Even though, they'll say Pharaoh in certain Bibles and they'll say Ramses and others, but they know what they was doing. They know what they was talking about. And they changed the books for that reason, which they weren't supposed to do. But, getting into numbers, when we get into that, again, it's just following the Hebrews through the journey. And, the big meltdown, of course, is going to come in Deuteronomy, where that's when things start getting interesting from there. And that's when it gets real good. In Deuteronomy, we start putting all this stuff together, more so pertaining to, what happened with Jews and history and slavery and everything like that. I mean, it's all there. Deuteronomy was the one that they changed. As I said, it's not the same as the originals, which we'll get into that then. But again, I want to thank you guys for purchasing, getting into the series. And it's a lot, the beginning is, easy, plain to see. And we could touch on the Greek mythology aspects of it, and at some points we will, where it fits, because there's a lot of Greek mythology stuff that we kind of sort of skipped over, not really relevant right now. But this is one of those things, as I said, we gotta come back and put it in where it fits. They were smart in how they wrote this Bible, how a lot of the stuff in the previous books pertain to later books, and make a lot of things make sense. So, for that part, we'll definitely get into that. But thank you guys for really taking the time to purchase and support and watch and really get into this series. I got a lot of feedback from Genesis, and I put out Exodus and Leviticus together for this reason, because again, there's not really so much now we need to get into, but these basic things that we touched on so far is definitely things that you guys need to know going forward as we get into Numbers, Deuteronomy, and really start to set the stage for Joshua. And it's a lot. It's just a lot, and it's just like trying to figure out how to put it together without giving away too much. It's tough to do. It's not an easy thing to do. Trust me. It ain't easy. I may make it look easy. It ain't easy, because there's a lot of stuff I don't want to give away, but we'll get into all this stuff. But the Bible, when it was given to us in slavery, is completely different from what it is now. We know, as I said, it's a lot of changes have been made for a lot of different reasons. A lot of things they took out. I talked about the Deuterocanonicals that was taken out in the 1800s, and if they was left in, where it's pertaining to Constantine and everything like that, a lot of things would have made a lot more sense. And I'm debating, which we'll probably get into those books in this series. I'm debating on that. If we don't get into them completely, we'll touch on them like we did with the Book of Enoch, which we're not done with yet. A lot more we got to get into with that as well. But that's basically it. I don't want to draw it out too long, because I want to give away nothing that's important. But this is basically Leviticus. When you get into it, it's getting into voodoo. We're going to really touch on that more as we go, so we can really pound that point home. And just basically on a surface, just touching on what the Hebrews need to do if they break God's law. So again, it's crazy. All the rituals, all the blood and sacrifices and all that stuff like that doesn't really fit and make sense with a God. Like, for what would So what does he need that for? So on the surface, as a religious person, if a person is religious and following this stuff, they got to be disgusted. If you read Leviticus yourself, excuse me, as you go through it, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's disgusting. It's just crazy. It's sick for God to be telling them to do this stuff. So, it's crazy. Like I said, they don't read the book, so they're not following this stuff, and they ain't doing this stuff anyway. But it's crazy. But thank you guys for taking the time to watch. And we'll touch on some stuff. A couple of videos I want to put on YouTube. And again, we'll get into numbers. We'll pick up where we left off. and get into the next 3 books and really, finish digging into this thing. But I'm trying to make sure I don't forget nothing that's important. I got stuff written down. And I think for the most part, I covered everything. Yeah. Yeah, because I'm shocked. I'm like, hey, am I done? I feel like there's a lot more, but, yeah, I'm basically done. But, yeah, thank you guys for taking the time to watch and purchase and support, and I appreciate it. And, yeah, definitely, when you get time, go through and just, skim through Leviticus and just pay attention and read. And anybody that's really into voodoo and understand rituals, if you're that far yet, you get what it's talking about. Some of the stuff we definitely going to come back to get you guys to understand about the altar and the priests and, stuff like that that's really pertaining to voodoo a lot more so, which is going to fit later on. You can't hide this stuff. They know what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. And they had to make it so it'd be easier to be drawn out later on in case people didn't get it in numbers. You can't expect people to go through and read the book, 50 times to get the stuff, which, some people do. But for the most part, it's straightforward. It's right here. And if you studying up on things and if you understanding what took place in ancient times, really get into these ancient rituals, really understand ancient religions and what they was doing back then. It's a lot of books out there that you definitely want to get into and start reading, because when you understand, especially pertaining with the Greeks or anybody in that area, the Ionians, everybody know that stuff. Because then when you start reading the Bible, it starts jumping out at you. Like, okay, I see what they're talking about. And it'll be easy for you to make those connections with certain people. Like, as we start getting down the road, we start getting into Ezra and everything like that, you'll start seeing where Zoroastrianism fits in, Buddhism as well. We'll get into that. It's all in here. They stole everything. They stole it. When people telling you all they did was go through different civilizations and different peoples and steal their shit and then destroy any traces of it. So, people can't say they got it from here. And that's basically what they did. But when it's real, when it actually existed, more people roll about it. People doing trade. You're not going to walk into somebody's village and see something that's crazy and then not talk about it. People talked about this stuff and it existed and they kept records. So, and some artifacts survive and a lot of stuff has been found. So when you see all this stuff, they can't hide everything. Then, it gives validity to you being able to bust this book open when you can't find the actual proof. So definitely be digging and be looking out for stuff like that. But, again, thank you guys for taking the time to watch. See you next video.